Hi everyone, my name is Leah Kopke and I'm a 3D motion design freelancer. I also have a podcast where each week I cover another 3D modeling tool for Cinema 4D. Hello and welcome! Today we're going to go over set flow to help us 3D model a cabinet, the finishing touches for it. And here's an example of the cabinet here. We'll go through all the settings for this tool and you'll become really familiar with it. This is a great tool for 3D modeling and smoothing out your edges and really controlling the curvature along parts of your model while adjusting those edges. So let's get started with talking about what we need to do with this cabinet before we start going through this tool and how we're going to use it to fix it. So I've 3D modeled this cabinet here. You'll notice that we have a few problems. First of all, these drawers don't have any handles. They need handles, and we have these handles here that we can work on, but there's a problem with them. They have no curvature to them. They don't look very ergonomic, so we're going to need to fix that so that they feel comfortable to hold. Our cabinet here, for right now, I'm using a bevel deformer on it just to bevel all the edges along it so that we get some nice reflections off the edges when we render this and add in materials and lighting. But for right now, I'm just going to turn this off and we're going to cover the bevel deformer in the future. And what you'll see here is that we have these supports here and they're very curvy and they're very ornate and beautiful, but there's a problem here. If you look at the rest of the cabinet, there's a lot of straight lines in this cabinet. Its form language is of 90-degree angles and straight lines, and then all of a sudden we have this really curvy section here, and it doesn't fit in with the rest of the cabinet. So we're going to fix that as well with set flow. Now, some good things to keep in mind is that this tool that we're going over today only works in edge mode. It's not going to work in point mode, polygon mode, only in edge mode. And I'll just start off with first clicking on these handles here. So we have this handle, and this handle. We'll start off with fixing handle number 1, as I've named it. And you'll see that we need to curve this. We need to make this more comfortable to hold. So we're going to use the hotkey UL, and we went over this in a previous episode. If you're interested in watching that, how to select loops and use loop selection, I'll leave a link to that below. For right now, I'm selecting all these loops, and we want these to have some curvature to them. So we have a few options on how we could go about that. And we can click on set flow. You'll see you can find this tool here. This is the set flow tool. Just a heads up, Maxon did update some of the icons. You'll notice that the iron tool looks a little bit different, and so does the fit circle tool, and so does the welding tool. But they still work about the same, and just so that you're aware that they changed those. But we have the set flow tool here. It's still very similar to what it was before, and you can find this off to the side when you're in edge mode. If you click on point mode or polygon mode, the tools change and you won't see it anymore. So this tool works for edge mode, so you'll see it off to the side when you're in edge mode. Now, the next place you can find it is under the mesh menu. Under move, you'll see set flow is right here. So those are the places where you can find it. And if I click on this tool, we'll activate it, and you can see our options appear over here in our attributes manager. If I click in my viewport and drag my mouse, you'll see we are adjusting the tension, and you can see this actually adjusting in the attribute manager as I drag this, and you can see it adjusting in here. I need to actually select this here, and I need to adjust the maximum angle back to 0. This is actually the default, but I was modeling in here earlier, so it remembered that I had it at 180 degrees. I'll set it back to 0 degrees, and I'll click and drag again, and you'll see that it looks a little bit different. So now we're getting curvature on our model. This handle looks much more curved. which was what we wanted to try to create. And when you click and drag your mouse, you're adjusting the tension. And what the tension is it uses the other loops that are parallel to the first loop in order to use those number of degrees to create that curvature. So it's using these loops and the angles in which they are in order to create that curvature. You can see how they're kind of angled here right now. If I click and drag, that's why this is becoming curved that way, is it's following that direction of those loops over there. Now we have some other options here like equal spacing. I'm going to actually hit undo, and just to show how this tool works, I'm going to make these loops not so equal anymore. I'm going to move this one over here. I'm going to select this one and I'm going to drag it over here. And I'll use UL again to just select all of these loops in between. And now I'll use our set flow tool, click and drag in the viewport. It's still creating that curvature, but what if I want those edges to have equal spacing between them just to keep our geometry nice and even and neat? And then it also helps while you're rendering this to have it just look smoother along the edges if you have equal spacing. So we're going to select this button here. And there you go. Now it's made all of those loops nice and equal in between. We can adjust the amount of curvature here. Maybe we just want a slight amount of curvature. So we could try 36%. You'll notice that as I decrease the tension, we also run into the problem where it's not being equally spaced as much. So another way you can equal space this, and I actually have gone over this in another episode, so I'll leave a link to it below. But if we go in the mesh menu, under move, you'll see equal spacing here, and it works very similar. And we can click and drag again, and it'll make those nice and equal. So that's the first part that I'd like to go over. Now we have this nice looking handle here. If we want to also bevel these edges, we can do that as well with the bevel tool inside the mesh menu that we've gone over before. The hotkey for it is MS. You can also try using a bevel deformer, and we'll definitely cover this more in depth in the future. But what I could do is I could just drop this under handle number 1 and it will begin beveling it. I'm going to increase the number of subdivisions for this bevel, and I'm going to decrease our offset here. Maybe we'll make it 0.2. Oh, that's way too big. 0.1. So that looks all right. And that's our first handle here. Now, let's go ahead and work on handle number 3 actually over here. So you'll notice this one has a different shape, and we still have set flow here. We have some other options here. As you can see, we need to adjust this, but we're going to start talking about maximum angle. So I'll click and I'll drag my mouse, and you'll see we have this totally different shape here. But what if I don't want to use both angles? What if I want the maximum angle that we use to be a little bit higher? You'll see that before I do that, add that tension, this one is 90 degrees, and it's using this loop here to calculate the curvature. And this one is quite a bit larger of an angle here. And that's being used to calculate the curvature too when I increase the tension. Well, what if I don't want this 90-degree angle to be influencing this? I can increase the maximum angle. And you can see that now no longer is this 90-degree angle here influencing the curvature. We're only allowing this larger angle here to influence the curvature. So that's what that is there. There's another situation where you may not want the polygons or the loops and their angle to be influencing these here. So we're going to actually talk about that up here. And just before we do that, I'm going to copy this with Control and drag it under our third handle just so that that's nice looking. Now let's talk about these supports here. So these brackets, they're beautiful. They don't match the form language of the rest of the model, so we need to adjust these. Now, in this case, we don't want these surrounding polygons and their angles really influencing the shape of this here while we use set flow. So let's talk about this here. I'm going to click here and you'll see that I already have those edges selected so that we could save ourselves some time. And we're going to click at set edge flow again. This time I want to have the maximum angle at 180 degrees because I don't really want the surrounding area affecting the curvature in here or how straight this is. So I'm going to click and drag. And you'll notice that we have these other options here called fallback mode. If it's set to off, it won't use the surrounding geometry to calculate the curvature of this. If you select edge, it will use these loops here to determine the curvature. So this loop here, that's following, that's right after this one, this loop here, edge loop, and this edge loop here is being used to calculate this curvature. So we have that there, and then the next option is normals, and it'll actually use the normal direction of those two. So if I go ahead and click on normal, you'll see it changes once again, and now it's using the normal direction to create that curvature. And that actually looks pretty nice. So I think that actually for this kind of cabinet, initially I was talking about just making these straight. And just so that you also know, there's this option here called linear. If you select that, it also makes it straight. And that works even if you don't have the maximum angle on. If you don't have the maximum angle on and you select linear, that will make that straight. I'm going to increase our maximum angle here. So let's say I actually am starting to like there be some curves within this cabinet. And I want the rest of the cabinet to really go with these curves here that we've added. Instead of making these straight, maybe they were too ornate and curvy before, but maybe there's a happy medium and we can mix together these straight lines and these curves together. So what we could try doing is we could select some other areas to add some curvature so that these all go together. We have these feet here. We have these feet here for the cabinet. What if I decide I'm going to go ahead and add a bevel around here so that we have a little bit more curvature in here. It doesn't need to be a ton. It just needs to be enough so that this goes with those curved supports, and maybe we'll have a little bit of a mix of straight edges and curved edges. Click on these, use the hotkey MS. We've gone over this tool in the past. I'll click and drag to create a bevel. We're going to need some more subdivisions, so I'll increase our subdivisions here. And this feels pretty good. This feels like a good number of subdivisions. And I'm happy with that. Now you'll notice that we're starting to get some triangles here, and I'm not liking that, so I'm actually going to hit undo, and I'm going to use UL, and we're just going to select these loops here so that we bevel all the way around, and we'll click MS again. I'll use my previous settings and just hit apply. And now you can see that this is looking pretty nice. We have a little bit more curvature in here. Now these supports don't look so out of place because we can see curvature elsewhere within this model. And what we can do is add even more curvature with one of our ergonomic handles over here. So I'll grab our handle over here. We're going to move it. I'm in model mode. And now you'll notice that the axis of our handle is all the way over here and our handle is all the way over here. That's going to make it hard to move. So we're going to go into our tools menu and we're going to go under axis, axis center. And I'm just going to hit execute with the default. And now you can see our handle is placed back where it needs to be. It's in the center. I'm going to hit the middle mouse button to see our 4 views. I'm going to hit the middle mouse button again in the front view. Now there's another problem. Although this is centered, we really want it to line up with this bottom part of the handle. So we've gone over this in the past. If you're interested in checking it out, I'll leave a link to it in the description below on how the grid works and on how the snap tool works in greater depth if you're curious. But what I'll do right now is I can click this button here for enable snap. The hotkey for that is also Shift S, and we have these modeling settings here. We want to snap to our grid, so I'll make sure that this is turned on and make sure that we have grid point and grid line selected. I need to enable the axis. The hotkey for this is L, or you can click this button up here. I'll click on this arrow and we're just going to snap it to the grid, and you can see it says grid point snap, which is great. We're going to snap it right there. We'll turn this off again now that we're done moving the axis, and we can go ahead and move this on up here and rotate it around. Turn it around 90 degrees. I'm holding down Shift to use the quantize tool. I'll leave a link to that tool in the description below as well. Hitting the middle mouse button in order to go back into this view. Now we can see that this isn't perfectly lined up, so we'll need to go into our top view here and zoom in a little bit more so that we can really make sure that this is lining up the way we'd like it to. Just like that, and we'll check it again in perspective. We can even try snapping to the polygon so that this is lined up a little bit better. That looks good. Now we're going to need to have this for each. Going to turn off the snap here for a moment. This looks pretty well centered. I'm going to hold down Control in order to duplicate this while holding down Shift while I move it in the Y direction. And you'll see we're actually snapping to increments. So I can snap this to 4.5 inches and it's centered in the next cabinet because that's 4.5 inches down. And I'll do that again. We'll snap here. And again, we'll snap here. Now we have these beautiful handles here. We also need to snap it to here. And just so that you know where your quantize settings are, since we covered this tool a while back, they're right over here, and you can select how far you move this. I'm working in inches right now, and I like to have this set to 0.5 inches for right now, so that's where it's at. But you can adjust that accordingly for any units you're working in. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift again, and we're going to bring this down about 4.5 inches, and then we'll move it out just a little bit, 3 inches or so. Can even turn on our snap again if we'd like to snap it to this cabinet here. So now we have these lovely handles, and these handles actually, I'd like to have them be children of the cabinets they're a part of so that they all move together. So I'm going to take this cabinet handle and I'm going to move it under this drawer. That's looking pretty good. I think that's good. We'll need to bring this one down here, this one up here. We have this handle. We'll need this handle to go in here. And now those are connected. This one is going to need this handle. This cabinet is going to need this handle. This cabinet is going to need this handle. I'm going to, and actually what you'll notice is that we no longer need these bevels applied to every single handle as we do right now, and I can even turn these off and they still look correct. And that's because this bevel deformer, since I placed it within the hierarchy of the cabinet, it's actually affecting all of these. So for right now, I can go ahead and just delete these bevels here because we no longer really need them. I'll just simplify things and make it nice and neat. Now everything's nicely beveled together. We have these two handles here. They were mostly for us trying out new shapes and doing some iterations on what kinds of handles we could have. I can go ahead and hide these by hitting these dots here while holding down Control. I'm going to delete this bevel. We don't need it anymore, really. And now look at that. We have this beautiful cabinet. And if you'd like to, you can texture and light it. And that's so much fun. And if you go ahead and 3D model your own cabinet and you use the Set Flow tool on this, I'd love to see it. So if you do that, please share on Instagram or on LinkedIn. I love to see what all of you create. And thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel welcome to leave it in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me to 3D model. I hope to see you here again next week, and I'll see you next time.